Welcome to Running Your Stories, episode 14. I'm here with Rachel Ross-Russell, who I met over a few races, and I think she has a very interesting story to tell. So let's get into the story. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. So I've kind of been a runner all of my life, sort of. My dad was a runner, and he was a sprinter mostly. But I remember when I was quite young, probably like 10, he started running with me, like just running around the block. And I think I did my first 10k with him when I must have been about 10 or 11. And it was one we had to kind of navigate a little bit. We got a little bit lost, but we got in just under the hour, which was really good. And that was my first 10k. And that was when we lived in the Netherlands at the time. And I was part of a big international school, and it had a really good ethos for sport. Mm-hmm. It was mainly an American school, so it was really good on sport. And I was kind of part of the cross country, and I really enjoyed my running. But when I was 13, I came back to England, and I went to live in Norfolk. And the school I went to was really poor for sports. Like I was easily the best runner in the school, to the point where it was kind of a bit ridiculous. I was right out the front, when we did the laps, and no incentive really to push myself or to do very well. In fact, it was almost like not cool to be particularly good at anything. So, and I started to get more into like music and drama, and so for my main teenage years, I was a little bit heavier. I was really not particularly sporty, but I think I always carried that sense that if I was sporty, it was running that would be my sport. Yeah. I never particularly developed any skill that took me down a path to be part of a team sport or anything. It was really just the running that I always knew was kind of my thing. And when I was 18, I went off to Liverpool University, and I was really drawn to have a go at the student TA, which is called the University Officer Training Corps, and I had to pass a test to get in. I had to run a 3-mile test to get in. Yep. And I really hadn't run at that point for a very long time, and I was really unfit, nearly killed me, but I still came second. So it's like I still had a bit of something in me that obviously something about my body was good at running even if I was really unfit. So and from that moment on, from 18, and I'm now 49, I went back to being somebody that loved to do sport, to run, all through like my time at university. Especially with the army, I really did train. I lost the weight that I'd gained. It was all like puppy fat. It wasn't massive, but it was just, I went back to being more of an athletic build. Yeah. And I really got into like the running club at the university and got my colours for university. And I was kind of one of those girls that boys didn't mind having in the group if we had to do a mixed task, because could keep up. So that was really good, and really kind of re-established that actually I am somebody that loves to run. I do love the outdoors. I love being fit. I love all of that. And then I did actually join the army from university. I went to Sandhurst, and again, running was my thing. That was, I ran for Sandhurst, I ran for the army. That was kind of my thing. But very sadly, at that point in my life, I also was going through quite a difficult time. I was in quite a challenging relationship, and my grandfather died, and I think the army training and everything took its toll, and I ended up under eating to the point where I really was, it was definitely a form of anorexia that I was struggling with. I was under eating, overtraining, really punishing my body, pushing myself really hard. Must have had such a tough mental strength that kept me going, but physically, I was down to about 6.5 stone. My natural weight's about 8.5 stone, so I was a couple of stone light, and 8.5 is healthy, but it's not big, so 6.5 was really skinny. And I wasn't in a good place in my head either. I was kind of using running as a way of burning calories and kind of punishing myself, really. That was what it was about. I was trying to, I think I've understood after that it was to do with feeling out of control and wanting to be in control of something, and food was something I could control, and my exercise was something I could control. Nobody could kind of stop me.
Yes.
But of course my performance dropped because I wasn't strong enough. My muscles were wasted, and I wasn't strong, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's probably just worth kind of dwelling on that a moment, because it does happen with people. I only had it personally to a very small extent around this time last year, when I was pushing my training as far as I possibly could towards the my first attempt at the Spine Challenger, and my weight had been coming down all year because I'd been ramping up the training, and it was quite a healthy, steady progression. But then I made a kind of a final big push on the training, and still tried to be over controlled on the eating. It wasn't becoming an issue as such, but I just hit a tipping point where for the first time in 18 months of training I started to get injured. And it happened quite immediately when I wasn't feeding my body enough, yet I was pushing the body harder and harder. I was lucky to catch it early, and basically just started eating more. And allowing my body to take in what it needed to repair, and got things back on track. But it's definitely something that is seen in the sport of people thinking lighter is always faster, which it isn't. There's definitely an optimum there.
And I remember my dad, to try and help me get better, because obviously it was hard for my parents, because it's very painful to love somebody that's kind of not well in that way, and want to help them get better. And really, it is a mental illness what I had, so you can't just flick a switch and fix it. And I remember Dad saying to me, and I've always remembered this ever since, is that food is fuel. Just like with a car, you have to put petrol in a car to make it go, you have to put food in your body to make it go. And that's and even now it's 25 years since that struggle I had with food, but I still now even think food is fuel, but I think of it more as a kind of make sure you've eaten enough, not sort of trying to eat a bit. It was like eat more. So that was quite a challenging time, and like I say, my performance dipped definitely, because I didn't have the strength. I mean, it's really hard running when you're really hungry, and like I say, it must have just been pure mental strength that kind of got me through all of the army training and kept me going. Anyway, and then thankfully I did get better, and really, to be honest, it was a very short-lived illness. It was only 3 years, which for something like anorexia is very short, really. And I started to get back involved in I left the army, which I think helped, and I got properly involved in a proper running club and had really good friends. That whole kind of sense of belonging, and the sort of family feel of being part of a running club where you look after each other and you train together and you push each other and you race together and all of that. It's really important. And had a good coach, and I got my weight stabilised, and I met my Duncan, who's now my husband, and so life was good, and I was running well, and I was kind of I kind of won a county championship for bucks, and I was good. I wasn't like outstanding. I was like a solid club runner that could do quite well at county level, but really not much beyond county level. And then I got married and had children, and bizarrely, having children made me faster. I don't know what happens, but I suddenly went from being kind of good, but pretty solid club runner that got the points rather than race winner, to particularly after my second child, I seemed to be winning. I won the Mansfield half marathon, and I just was winning like quite big races, Harrogate 10k, and my PBs came down, so I was running like 36-minute 10ks. I think my best half marathon was 79 minutes. So I was actually doing really well, but then I made a big mistake because I really wanted to have a proper go at marathon running. I wanted to up to marathon. I think if I'd stuck with 10k and half marathon, I would have been very good at 10k and half marathon. But I really struggled with the fact with road running, it's so competitive and so time based. So you're out, once you've done, I don't know, 4 or 5 36-minute 10Ks, you can't run a slower 10K without it being a bit of a disaster.
Yes.
And the same, and I stopped enjoying 10Ks and half marathons because I had to run too fast for too long. And I stopped enjoying it, and I started to feel the pressure of needing to win because that was what was expected. And I felt like, once you've won a few decent races, sort of you start to think, oh gosh, what if I can't perform next time? And then of course any injury or illness or cold, any cold you pick up, anything starts to become a big issue, and you're panicking thinking, oh god, I can't train, and then it all just becomes very overwhelming. Well, I found it kind of overwhelming, and picking up injuries all the time. So like I was on track to do my best marathon that I would have ever done, I think, in Berlin. And at the pace I was running at, I should have been coming in at around 2:45, 2:50. And I got bronchitis, like literally got hospitalised because my lungs just stopped working with this bronchitis. And I remember crying on the day of the Berlin Marathon because I should have been there, and I could barely get out of bed, and it was within 2 weeks before I was fine, and then I picked up this bronchitis, picked up a chest infection that became bronchitis, and it was like 6 months worth of training wasted. And then I picked myself back up again, got back into training, and I was supposed to be doing the London Marathon, and again I was flying, like I was really on track for my best marathon ever. And I picked up a knee injury, and I missed 6 weeks of training, and so I missed from the middle of February to the beginning of April, and then I had to run the marathon. And in the end I did a 3:08, which is still really respectable, but obviously I'd missed crucial training, and I never did do my sub-3 marathon because after that I then picked up a long-term really bad injury. But I just got myself into a pattern again of slightly overtraining, not enough rest, feeling the pressure of winning. I remember in Germany, we were living in Germany at the time, and I used to do these klute runs, which were beautiful, brilliant runs, and they were on the German net. And I remember I came first, and I beat all the men. And this German guy was not happy, and it was actually in the local German paper. This man had said, I'm never going to be beaten by a woman ever again. And sure enough, he didn't let me beat him again. But I was kind of relieved when we left England to go to Germany, because I thought, oh god, I don't have the pressure of those races that I've got to go back and run again and win again, kind of thing, and I could just go and be me out in Germany and just run.
Yeah, although in some ways some people would find it difficult to escape it now because it's all on Strava. It doesn't matter where in the world
I don't do
run.
any of that. I don't do anything where I can compare myself or be compared with anyone else anymore, because I don't want that. I don't want to stop loving running.
Yes.
And I started to not love running because of that pressure of the, that competition pressure, and particularly with road running. Anyway, then I got this knee injury on my left knee. It just I didn't really know what happened, but I just one day found that I had this enormous amount of swelling in my knee, and it was so painful. I literally walking from this room to the kitchen would take me 5 minutes, and I'd be sweating with the pain and have to sit down and almost be in tears with the pain. And I remember having to get my children to the school at the time, and it's literally, I don't know, a quarter of a mile, if that way, and I couldn't walk to get them to school, and I had to get myself to the doctor. I couldn't drive, and I couldn't do anything. In the end, I got myself on a bike and just pedalled with one foot. Just had to leave that leg dangling, and I got into the doctor's, and I remember lying down and just crying, I was like, I'm really sorry, it's so painful, I'm just in so much pain, I can't even not cry. The doctor was really sweet, and I think he just assumed maybe it was a cartilage or something quite straightforward. Anyway, I got it all checked, and there wasn't, I had what do you call it, where you have 2 little holes in your knee, osteoporosis, whatever you call it, when you have it was a non it was just 2 bit. They went in with the camera and poked it about and did the thing, and they realised that it wasn't cartilage. They did trim it off a bit and tidy it up a bit, but there was no obvious reason. But I had a bursa cyst behind my knee, which was full of fluid as well. Anyway, it kind of calmed down, and I thought it was all going to be okay. After my operation, it sort of healed pretty well. But then within about 3 months, it had come back again, and it was worse. And in the end, I had 18 months of no running at all. And the pain levels were really high for a lot of that. It was hard even just to be a mum, like just look after my kids, to play with them, take them to the park was hard. And that was just a really tough time, because it was just after Duncan had left the army. And so I'd been part of the army for 20 years, either as myself being in it or Duncan being in it, and me being alongside him as his wife. So that was a big part of my identity, was tied up with army, but the other massive part of my identity was tied up with being a runner. And I think as well, because I'd been a mum for, by that stage, 6 years, and I hadn't worked, because being an army wife, unless you've got a portable profession, it's very hard to just keep finding jobs. And of course, once you've got little children, trying to get childcare and jobs, and to be honest, it's not worth it. And actually, I was glad to be able to be a mum and be with my kids. But it does mean that, again, what does everyone says to you, what do you do? And if you say, I'm a mum, it's like, oh, nothing then. and my running was kind of like the thing that people, you're the runner, and you win, I've won races, and I've, that's my thing. And so that was another massive part of my identity. So I'd kind of lost 2 really big chunks of who I thought I was, like, military and runner. And when my knee first went, I still hadn't done my sub-3 marathon. I still haven't, but at that point that was really serious. I remember thinking to myself, I've got to do my sub-3 marathon. Like, I was so close so many times, and I've just missed it because of injury, and I've got to be okay to do this. And that was like the be-all and end-all. And I don't know, it was like I literally had to let that part of me completely die. Like, I had to just it was such a painful process, but I had to let go completely of being a runner and just build a new person, if you know what I mean. I had to build a new me that wasn't a runner. And I remember for the first maybe 6 months, people would say, are you still doing all your running? I was like, oh yeah, I'm a bit injured at the moment, but I'll be back. And then the next 6 months I was like, well, no, not really. And then by the final 6 months, it was like, no, I'm not really a runner anymore. Like, I don't run. I haven't run for like over a year. But I kept fit. I kept trying I did whatever I could still. Like, I didn't sit back and go, oh well, that's it then. And then so I really started to develop a pattern of doing a lot more core exercises. I mean, bearing in mind I couldn't really use my legs for quite a bit, so I did a lot of core stuff. I did loads of hours on that flipping handbike in the gym, where you just all you can use is the upper body. So I did the whole handbag thing. And then when I could, I started to get back into a little bit of elliptical training and biking. And then our gym started doing spinning classes, which I just can't speak highly enough of spinning classes. I think they're fantastic. And I discovered I could do the kind of level of training that I used to do in running on a bike. And that with these classes particularly, because they are interval training, they're like doing a track session, but you do it on a bike. And it didn't impact my knee. Anyway, gradually, obviously the consultant let me go, and he said to me, he said, you'll never run another marathon, and when you run really 2 to 3 miles max, that's all you really ought to be doing. And I remember thinking, it's not really worth getting my trainers on for 2 to 3 miles. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to bother with that. And I thought to myself, I don't know, I guess I just didn't accept that was me written off. I just wasn't gonna accept that. I thought, well, we'll see. Maybe I won't ever run another marathon, but I'm not taking that as definite. And so I just I just found myself doing a lot more walking, and started to get really I've got a lovely friend who I walk with a lot, And she wasn't particularly a walker either, or a runner. She and I do the Hardmoors. We don't run together, but we go together, and this is like a thing that we've kind of started together. And I'm really grateful to her, because she did kind of get me out and give me and I think she would say the same of me, that we kind of actually were helping each other get out onto the moors and just spend that time out walking. And then my friend did the moonwalk asked me if I wanted to do the moonwalk up in Edinburgh. I don't know if you've heard of the moonwalk, but it's an overnight marathon that you walk, but you have to walk, you're not allowed to run it, and it's all for breast cancer. And so I thought, oh yeah, I'll do that. So that was like, I'd signed up to do this moonwalk with my friend, and then I still had my place for the London Marathon, which I'd deferred, but it was it was a good time place, so it was like, near the front of the pack for the marathon. And I was thinking, I thought, well, if I can walk the moonwalk, I could walk the London Marathon. I can still do it. The fact that I can't run it doesn't mean I can't still do it. So I went and I had a little backpack, and I had my snacks, and I was up for a whole day. I was quite happy. And anyway, I set off, and I was right up in the flight of all the good runners, because I'd got this number that was right near the front. So I thought, oh, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to run a bit, because otherwise it'll be like a broken down car on the M5. That'll be me stuck in the middle, and all these runners trying to get past. So I kind of thought, well, I better jog a bit. So I kind of jogged a bit, and then in the end, I jogged a bit more than I thought I was going to jog, and kept trying to walk, and people were like, no, come on, keep going, don't worry, don't give up. And I'm like, no, I'm not giving up. I really can't. I haven't trained at all for this. And anyway, I ended up jogging it and walking it. I really loved it, and I finished it in 4 hours 48. Which was an hour and a half slower than my previous attempt, but still not too shabby for someone who hadn't run for 18 months. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
a lot of people would be rightly proud of finishing it in that time.
So I thought, well, okay, that was good. I enjoyed that, and then I went off and did this moonwalk, and then I did the Swaledale Marathon, which is definitely one that you can either walk or run. And and I just thought, okay, well, I can walk marathons. That's great. I like walking marathons. All good. And I think just gradually over the years, from just being quite at peace, really at peace with the fact that I wasn't a runner anymore, and really at peace with the idea that you can walk marathons, and you can still get out there, and you can still do a lot of good stuff without needing to be running it. Running is brilliant, but I think I had got to a point of thinking, running isn't worth losing everything else. I don't want to lose all the other things I love to do. I love skiing, I love cycling, I love just walking and being with my boys, and
being able to walk around the house.
Being able to walk around the house, exactly. I thought running's not worth it. At the start of the injury, it was worth it. It was worth everything to get back into running. But by the end of the injury, it's like, no, it's not. And running needs to be in perspective. It has to be part of who I am and what I do, but it can't be all of who I am and what I do, and it can't be so important that it's worth risking everything else. And so my injuries kicked off in 2007, end of 2007. The London Marathon that I did, a running London Marathon, was 2010. So basically I had 2 years where really, like I say, there was a patch where I got a bit better. So I did actually run the Harrogate League in 2008. So there was a 6-month period where I was down. Then I got back into it, and then again by summer 2008 I was back, and then it wasn't till 2010. So it was an 18-month break there, and then so now we're in 2018. So 2016. I gradually just kept doing more and more of these kind of trail runs and slash walks, and I did them. Certainly the first several that I did in hiking boots, not trainers. Then gradually the hiking boots turned into walking shoes, to running shoes, and my son. The other thing that happened during that time was my son Ben wanted to. It was after the 2012 Olympics. He was really inspired, wanting to go and run as a sprinter. And I knew that I run with Richmond Zetland Harriers, and I knew that they had a brilliant sprint junior section. So when he turned 11, I started taking him once a week,
Yeah.
And Richmond Zetland are just such a lovely club, so brilliant. I mean, I hadn't really been part of them for quite a while, but that didn't matter, you know. I just kind of got scooped back into the squad, and again, held it very lightly. If Ben couldn't go, I didn't bother going, just because I thought, it's not about me, it's about him. You know, this isn't about me needing to go training, it's about taking my son so he can train. And then gradually over the years, it's got to the point where I feel fully back into that squad of runners, and he's loved being part of it, still does. And there's been a really good group of boys his age, and they've been quite a strong sprint team, so he's really enjoyed that. But I would still say that I do now go and very much enjoy it for myself, but again, it's still more about him than it is about me. It's not, I don't need to train twice a week with the running club, or feel bad about it. You know, I love training when I go to training, but if it doesn't fit with Ben's schedule, I don't take myself on my own, if you see what I mean. And then just gradually, I think my Swaledale Marathon is my best example of how I've gradually built back into it. So my first Swaledale time in 2004, I won it, and it was 3:36. My next Swaledale time in something like 2011 was 7:36 or thereabouts, about 7.5 hours. And then I don't think I did 12, but I did 13, was about 7 hours, 14 was about 6.5, 15 was about 6, 16 was about 5.5, 17 was 5, and then this year, I think that was right. Anyway, it was basically, I've kind of gone down by half an hour increments over all the years I've done it. And this year I came third lady, and I did it in 3:48, 14 years after I'd won it in 3:36. And I never in my wildest dreams ever imagined, one, being a trophy winner again in Swaledale, and two, being only 12 minutes off that time that I'd done all those years ago. Never imagined that in my wildest dreams. So that's kind of a real indication of how really slowly I just brought myself back to a place where actually I can cover the distance quite respectably again. My first ultra that I did was in 2016. And I'd done quite a few. I used to do the Aussie Phoenix, used to do the Swaledale. I'd done a lot of kind of walking where I'd done quite a lot of distance in a day, but I'd never done 50 miles ever. And my friend, again, the same friend that got me into the moonwalk, said she was doing 100k. And I'd seen this. What had happened was, me and my husband had been away in the lakes for our wedding anniversary, and we'd seen these trail runners coming through with the numbers and everything, and chatted to them. And Duncan, at the end of the day, Duncan said, "You're going to want to do that, aren't you?" And I was like, thinking about it. And anyway, I had to ask special permission because it was on our wedding anniversary weekend the following year. But I remember looking up at the website and seeing that the entries were opening on the 8th of December. I was like, never done 50 miles, but well, it'd be a challenge. I don't know, maybe give it a go. So I roped in another friend to do it with me, and sort of cranked up the training, and we went and did a recce of the whole route, but we did it over we did the official recce for the first section, which is you have to learn the navigation, and then the second bit from, I think it was from Threlkeld to the end, we did in 2 chunks. So we walked from Threlkeld to Ambleside in horrible weather. It's absolutely awful, carrying a little rucksack with our, overnight. Stayed at the youth hostel and then did this. So basically we did what we did in one day, we did over 2 days, which without even doing the first bit, but we covered the whole route. And I would say wrecking a route really does help, massively helps. Anyway, walked quite a lot of it, to be honest. A lot of hills, big hills, and I'd never done like night running or anything like that before, so it was all a big adventure. But our aim was to do it in under 16 hours, and we did it in 15:45, and I absolutely loved it, like completely loved it. Anyway, I was chatting to a lady who, you know how you do, you chat to people on the long runs, and she was saying, I was saying how it was my first one, and then she was telling me about the Hardmoors. And when she knew where I lived, she was like, "Oh, you should look at the Hardmoors, they're really great, you'll love those." So I thought, well, have a little look. And I think I was probably still in that kind of post-exercise high, post-race or event high.
Yeah.
And I entered the Hardmoors, like, oh, there's a Hardmoors 55. I'll have a go at that, because I could see the route and I knew I liked it. Anyway, my friend didn't do that one with me. And I remember I turned up with the Hardmoors 55. This would have been, so I did the Lakes in a Day in October 16, so this would have been March 17. And I remember thinking, well, this will be fine, I've done this, and I had recce'd the whole route. I'd done the little recce's, and I look, when you look around, you're like, oh dear, these guys are all proper runners. Like, this is a bit more of a running race. Like, the last one was definitely walkers and runners, but this is, and it was a 24 hours for 50 miles, whereas this was 16. And I'd started looking at the cut-off times, and I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to stroll. I'll have to, get a bit of a wiggle on. Anyway, again, I just really loved it. I did end up running way more than I thought I was trained to do, and I did it in 11 hours 51. So it was a really good time. I was really pleased. Really good. And I loved it. And really from that moment on, I've actually, because I ran that one, I've done 3 Hardmoors marathons. I did the Wooler, I've done Kettlewell, 3 Peaks, Swaledale again. I've done a French Alps run, like several longer, some like Swaledale and Kettlewell are marathons, but they're just under the 26, but all of the Hardmoors are over the 26. Some of them are as much as 30. Kelder was 29, not Kelder, Wooler was 29, and then I did the endurance marathon along the coast in Northumberland. And for the last sort of year, I've been placed in a lot of, I did the Dales Trails series, where they did the Dales Trails 20, 30 and 40, was placed 3rd in the series for that and 3rd in the 40. So just really surprising myself that actually I've started to go back to being like in the top 3 or 4 in most of the races, and certainly like the Wooler one, I think I was 7th, but I was first vet 40. And then I think that was and then at the Dales Trails I was first vet 40 for the 30, but then I was 3rd overall for the 40. And the last 2 Hardmoor marathons I've won, and I was surprised. Like, honestly, I'm as surprised as anybody, because I just feel like my attitude is not about winning at all. It's not about the time. It's about loving the running, and if I stop loving it, I need to, if it starts to get that, because I've started to win stuff, that I start to feel that pressure that, oh dear, I'm not loving it anymore, then I'll have to pull back, because that's, I love the trail running because I love the trails, and I love the people that you meet. I love just everything about it, and it's so different to that really pressured road race, on your clock, like every split, every mile you're looking at your split to see if you're on it, and if you're off the pace, you say, oh god, I've got to pull that back. For a start on the trail marathons, you don't even know when the miles are, and I don't have a watch that tells me. It's just completely just about running, isn't it?
As you say, one of the big differences is if you tell somebody you've done a road marathon or a road 10k, the first thing they'll say is, what was your time? What was your time? Whereas for a trail marathon, because my first marathon was a trail marathon, and it was 4 hours 50, I think, and people look at me like, that's a really long marathon time. I was 7th. And the winner was 4 hours 30. It's
just nothing.
The time on its own doesn't mean anything.
No, and even if you did the same marathon like 1 year and then did it again, the time could be completely different.
How dry it is, because we were up to our knees in mud that day. That's what took so long. It was supposed to be trail, and more than half of it was what I'd call fell running, because it was so muddy and boggy, and it was. And the hills, some of them have got loads of hills in, some of them got less hills. You've got, I actually really like the hills, but still they take time, because you've got to get up them. And then actually getting down the hills for me is not always brilliant. So, sorry.
that takes time as well, doesn't it?
It does. And actually, one of the things on the last race that I did, it was a mix between road and trail, a little bit too much road for me, but it's right next to my house, as I say, which is why I did it. But there's 2 sections on it where you're trying to be efficient on your downhill, and it's steep downhill, but it's on tarmac. And last year, that was actually my first ultra last year. I did one loop, did the 30 mile, and I went way too fast on the first one of those 2 steep downhills on tarmac, and basically hurt my legs, my shins, everything. By the time I hit the second one, I was struggling to walk down it. But every race has different challenges like that, you know, like the Hardmoors 60 that we both did. Everyone talks about the steps on that. Having heard about nothing but how bad the steps were going to be for 6 months before I did it, I thought they were fine, actually.
Yeah, same. I think they're quite good. They just give you a bit of a hand up the hill.
I don't know what all the fuss was about, to be honest. But I think that's because I'd been told so much about them, I'd prepared. There's a massive set of steps on a dam. It's about 7k run from my house to this dam, which is a nice warm up before you start running up the steps. So I was prepared for it, because that's all anybody talks about with the Hardmoors 60. But it's actually a lot of what you've said about sort of staying in love with the sport and with running is exactly where we ended up on the last podcast with another lady called Rachel, where she'd actually, her very, very brief version of her story, she battled all of her life with mental health issues, then found running and really helped her until she started getting really competitive. And again, she was winning marathons and things, and she's now into her second coming, as it were, and back to enjoying it. And as she said, you need to find what you love. And I think, and really as well, focus on that.
Like, one of the things I always say to myself is, don't bother what anyone else is doing. You just run your race. And like, I don't use a watch that tells me anything other than my time, because I don't want my watch to start being the thing I'm competing against. I'm just really conscious of what doesn't work for me. So like in our gym, you can have like a login, and every time you do a spin class, it will log your spin, and then you compare, you can see if you're getting better. I'm like, no, I'm just going to start beasting myself, trying to beat my last time and that's not, I'm going there to train, and if I have a bad day, I have a bad day. Everyone has bad days, but if I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm starting to beat myself up if I have a bad day.
Because again, it's especially, as I mentioned earlier, with Strava, it's a trap that people fall into, thinking that like every training run has to be faster than your previous training
or that
run.
You're comparing with somebody else.
I do like to look at it afterwards. I've only very recently got this fancy watch, and the only reason is that I want it to track me, so I can look at the data afterwards. Because I like to just run on how I feel.
That's right.
And it's just trying to stay in that zone where you're running comfortably and enjoying it. And then there's certain hills or certain sections of routes that I run locally, and I think, okay, I'm going to challenge myself up this hill. Which then becomes interval training, which is good. And I'll look at it afterwards, and then Strava will tell me, you've run your fastest ever time up that sector. And I thought, well, I wasn't even trying on that sector. And that's why I like looking at it afterwards, is because I often surprise myself that it's not the pieces that I was really focused on where I've just set the fastest time I've ever done. It was the ones where I was just just relax, enjoy yourself. Isn't that a nice view over there, and the sun's shining, and just I think it was just on Wednesday this week, went out for a lunchtime run, and it was absolutely glorious sunshine. It must have got up to about 16 degrees Celsius, and I was just running along thinking, how fantastic is it to enjoy this sun in the middle of November in Huddersfield, where it always rains. And I got back, and Strava segments that I've put fastest times on, and it's like, well,
because you're enjoying it.
And it's just enjoying it, and
I think that to me, it's about everything's about balance, isn't it? But I feel like it's about just keeping running in balance with everything else. And like this week, I've I've been away with work for a couple of days with on a residential with school children, so there's no way I couldn't have run now. In the past, that would have stressed me, the fact that I couldn't get out for a run. But I'm really glad to be in a place where I can say, I can't run these days, that's fine, I've got other things I need to do. But then equally, you know, running is still a really important part of my life, and I still make time for it as best I can, whenever I can. And that's good, you know, like running is the thing that helps me to keep my stress in balance. It's definitely, you know, a really great source of friendships and you know, the beautiful routes. And I'm so lucky to live in North Yorkshire, where there's just so much beauty on my doorstep to just go and run. I never run with anything in my ears, or, you know, it's just, I love that outdoors freedom, you know, that just feeling like it's just amazing. So it's still a really important part of who I am, and it's still something that I really love. But I feel that, and even if I'm doing the same number of hours of running that I used to, it's my head that has changed. So it's my head isn't allowing running to be what defines me. And you know, like if I do get injured, well, there's lots of other parts of me, you know, and like I did have quite a serious plantar fasciitis injury just probably about 4 and a bit years ago. And it was at that point where I was about to start the job that I'm doing now, and I was going to be in Richmond working in the Richmond Zetland Harriers. It's just, you know, 15 minutes from my job, and I was going to be able to go from work to Harriers, and I was going to start being more regular, and Ben was at the school as well, so we were going to go together. And for the first 3 months of that plan, I was walking the dog whilst he was running, because I couldn't run because of my foot. But what I did during that time was I just went out on my bike, and then and that was fine. I was totally fine to be injured for 3 months, because I just substituted it with bike riding, walked the dog instead of going to track. Whereas I could not have done that, like, you know, 10 years ago, I couldn't have done that. I would have been stressed out because I couldn't run. So it's like, the running is still really important. The ability is still there, definitely, but my head is in a different place, a healthier place, and so I can love it, you know, and I can do it and love it and not feel that pressure and that kind of, and I'm not injured as much. And I think that's partly because I don't just run. All of the core and the spinning and everything that I developed as part of the time when I couldn't run, I've kept that in. I only probably run 3, maybe 4 times a week in my normal routine, and I'll spin twice, and I'll do 2 or 3 like circuit training or core. Probably a cycle, spin, run, and do core stability and circuit training, and I do that every week, and so I keep a really good level of fitness, but it's not all about running. And then I do these longer runs, you know, at weekends or whenever I fit them in as part, and mostly it's just the events. Like, I'm not particularly doing lots of training for the events, I just do the events. And I think a lot of the reason why I'm less injured is because I'm not pushing the running. It's not just running, you know. Definitely the cross training has got to help. I've done a lot more running training this year than I did last year. I was building up the distance a lot, very as aggressively as I thought my body could take, because the kind of journey that you've been on of finding that it's so competitive at the shorter distances. As soon as I started to get drawn into that, partly realising that I could get really, it was because I kind of got into regular running about 2.5 years ago, and that was just from starting to do park run, and you start seeing your 5k time dropping and dropping and dropping, and partly I looked at it and thought, well, actually it's sort of 5k 10k distance, the young guys that are doing this, you know, I was turning 40, I think there's no way I'm ever going to hit those times, no matter how hard I work, and I could turn it into a very negative thing trying to get anywhere near it, and thankfully I kind of bypassed getting into that trap and
push myself onto the trails, and then I do think I've gone up the distances too fast, because I went from 10 miles to 110 in 12 months.
Did you do the Hardmoors 110?
No, I did the Spine Challenger.
Oh. Isn't that 200? Or are there different distances?
The Spine race is 268, and then the Challenger, which is kind of like the entry event, is
so you have to do that
110.
First, and then
it depends what else you've done. But I think it's sensible to. Because it's like a lot of other races that have sort of two distances like that. The kit list and everything for the Challenger is exactly the same as what it is for the full event. So it does really start to get you prepared for.
And what time of year is that one?
January, middle of January.
So both of them in the middle of January.
Yeah. The Challenger starts on the Saturday and the Spine race starts on the Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So they use the same checkpoints for the early part of the race.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of as the Challenger people leave, then the Spine race people start. The elite field starts to come in.
I can't imagine doing that.
So yeah, I mean, I'm signed up for the Challenger again this January, having learnt a lot more and run a few more longer races in between. But yeah, I mean, it's actually, I don't know if you saw what John Steele posted yesterday, I think, about
finding your distance.
Yeah, finding your distance, and obviously I really strongly agree with what he said, because I'm very much like him, that it's not that I'm trying to be competitive as to why I've gone up in distance. It's more that I couldn't be satisfied at the shorter distances, thrashing myself and still being so far from the front kind of thing. Whereas on the longer distance things, because I'm still a very inexperienced runner, like on the Hardmoors 60, being only the second time I'd run more than 50 miles. And I finished 17th out of, it was 200 and odd people there. That's very respectable. And so that's why I'm drawn to those longer distances, because it puts me in a kind of respectable kind of place, and I enjoy it in a strange kind of way.
I enjoy it, definitely. I don't know if I can go above 60.
Yeah, whereas like John was saying, it doesn't mean to say that somebody who really enjoys running 10Ks has to up the distance. They don't have to at all. It's find your thing. If you're really happy there, stay there. If you're starting to lose your love for that, then try something else. And see where you end up.
I am going to do the half, which is 15 miles for the next Hardmoors, because last year I did the full and it was 30 miles, and it's in December, and if you work in a school, by the time you get to the middle of December, you almost certainly got a cold, and you're almost certainly on your last legs as you come in towards Christmas. And I had a cold and I felt really rubbish, and then the week after I really felt like I was going to die. I mean, I did a good run. I enjoyed it. I think it was fourth. It was 5.5 hours, but it was really cold, and I was ill for the whole of the rest of the next week. So ill I couldn't really do anything apart from just about manage to get to work. And I thought, it's not going to be any different next year. So I went for the half, but I've just got a feeling the half is going to be too short. I think that will be too short. But I just think I would have been slightly dreading it if I'd put in for the marathon this time. But I think I do like the Hardmoors marathons, where it's about a marathon but a little bit longer. Anything between 20 and 30 miles, I think you can just manage. It's not over and beyond like a normal day out. I've done 150, 155, which I think is more than 55 because it's a Hardmoors, and the 60, which was more than 60. So I've done 100k.
It was 63.
63, yes. I've done 100k, but I can't actually imagine going further. Everyone says, "Oh, you'll do the 110," but I don't know if I will.
Again,
I don't plan to.
Like we're talking about with different kind of types of races, especially when you're getting into the trails, like the Hardmoors 110. As I understand it, it's quite a fast race, for that distance on trails, the cut-off times are fairly aggressive. It's a race you're going to run.
You have to run bits.
Whereas the other race I'm signed up for next year is the Lakeland 100, which is still going to be a challenge for me to make sure I'm really ready for it. And the reason why I like to be really ready for it is because I want to enjoy it, not just endure it. But like the Lakeland 100 it's much hillier, but therefore it's expected you're going to hike up the hills.
Yeah.
So they're very different
times.
There was a really good discussion where I think John commented on it as well, because he's run them both, and they're very different kind of events. So again, it's not just about stepping up the distance, it's about choosing the event that's going to suit you. And going along and enjoying it.
Because I do enjoy the hilly stuff. Like I didn't particularly enjoy the Northumberland Coastal Marathon because it was flat. It was flat, and it was a lot of roads as well.
I know some people that have done like the canal marathons.
Oh yeah, no.
And
I wouldn't enjoy that. Yeah,
I do bits of running on the canal next to where I live, because it's actually a really nice trail to link hills together. But I don't quite, and hopefully I'll be doing a podcast with a lady who's done she did the Liverpool to Manchester double. That's 100 miles, pretty much all on canals. And I've no idea how you pace that.
No.
Because when you got hills, you pace everything around the hills, don't you?
Well, the hills, for me, the hills give you a bit of a rest. Because you don't run the hill. Well, I never run the hill, never.
And that's how you pace.
So you change your pace, and you go up the hill. You change your pace,
you eat and drink on the hills.
And then the downs aren't my favourite, because I'm a bit anxious about falling over. And in fact, the first time you met me,
of course you never do, of course.
My face covered in blood because I'd fallen down the hill.
We might have to add that picture along with some of this that we share out. It's a great picture.
So
well, especially because I met you because you ran past me, and each person that went past me, I thought, I can't get passed by somebody else. I'll try and keep up with them. And I managed to keep up with you, and it was probably for about an hour. I could see there was blood on your hand and a little bit on the side of your face. And then every time we went into a checkpoint, people were sort of horrified, and I was thinking, what's wrong with them? And it wasn't until after we finished that I saw your face.
Well, that was like it for me, because so what happened with me was that I absolutely loved that whole first section across the top, and I was kind of leading a long little snake of people across that section. Not that I really knew where I was going, but it was quite obvious.
We should probably say this is the Wharfdale Three Peaks.
And I came to the top of the hill, and I just knew I was running well, and I was feeling really good. And then I got to this sharp downhill, and I thought, oh, everyone's just going to come past me, because that's what always happens. Like, I do really well on the way up, and then I do really badly because I go too slowly on the way down. So I was really trying my hardest not to let everybody come past me. And I was actually doing better than I normally do, but I was a bit on the edge of safety the whole way down. And then a lady came past me, and she said to me, are you second or third lady? And I said, I think I'm third, or I don't know what I was, I can't remember. And second, maybe, I don't know. And because she spoke to me, and because she kind of highlighted the fact that she'd gone past me and sort of effectively taken my place, my concentration just went, and I just slipped, and I smacked my face down. Like, when it first happened, I was like, oh, and it kind of spurted blood, so there was like blood on the floor. And this lovely man behind me kind of picked me up. He's like, you all right? I was like, I don't know. And then I stood up, and I thought, oh, well, I kind of am all right. And then I just, he gave me this wad of tissue so I could stick it on my face. And then I thought, well, I'll run down to the next checkpoint and see. And then I thought, no. And they tried to sort of bring me in. I was like, I knew that if I started asking for first aid, that was it. I'll be there for an hour. I was like, no, I'm fine actually. If you've got and so he gave me like a bandage. Yeah. So then I thought, well, I've got 4K or 4 or 5K, wasn't it, to the next one round at Crathorne. I thought, well, if I'm all right getting to there, I'll just keep going. But when I met you, I was really pleased, because I knew you were mountain rescue, and that if
you just kept asking me, do you think I'm
all right? And I remember trying to eat some flapjack, and I couldn't chew because my jaw had obviously been whacked, and I was thinking, oh, I can't chew the flapjack. And then, but it wasn't till I got to the end, and then I looked at myself. I was like, oh my word! No wonder everyone kept gasping every time they saw me. And then actually, it's fixed up pretty well. There is a little bit of a dent in my nose, and there's a little bit of a scar here and here, but you can't really see it anymore.
Yeah, I almost didn't recognise you when I saw you at the Hardmoors because you didn't have
normal face,
blood coming down your face.
But so that's one of the reasons I don't like downhill. But I did notice on the 60 that the people who were running that weren't flying down the hills. No. So I was all right. I was in good company.
Well, I think because like the Wharfdale 3 peaks, with it being like 22 miles, it's like long fell run kind of distance.
Yeah, so you got good.
And so you got fell runners there who were far better technical runners than I am, which again is why I like the longer distance trails, because
not technical.
Yeah, I'm sure the elite people. I mean, there was 2 guys finished 9 hours something.
The guy
they were just way. You know, they must have had all the technique going on. But you know, like you say, the majority of the field isn't like that.
No, it's nice. It's so lovely. And the other thing I was thinking as well is that I forgot what I was going to say. I was going to say something. We were saying about technical fell runners. No, I've forgotten it. It might come back. Yeah, I don't know. I've forgotten it. Yeah, but there's definitely a big difference in the technique, which that's one of the reasons that I've done. Well, that race that we met on, that's almost a fell race, really. Yeah.
It's just the fact that they set it up as a challenge that you can also walk. I think that stops it being officially a
and also
fell
there's
race.
No prizes, which is good, because again it means it's just for fun, isn't it? Yeah.
But then I've done 2 other fell races this year that are actually similar, only a little bit shorter distance.
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Same amount of hills, and I just do that to kind of try and keep pushing myself out of the comfort zone and try and push myself on these techniques a bit. But it's tough.
I know what I was thinking. The other thing I think as well is that one of the things that I think I do get right, almost accidentally, is the pacing. And I think one of the things that allows me to do well is that I'm really consistent. Like so on the downhills, whilst I know lots of people do fly past, actually, like you said, if you take the downhills too aggressively, you actually knack your legs for the uphills and for the flats.
Yes.
And I think whilst there is something obviously to be said for the flying down the downhills, I think that really only applies for the shorter races, because I think the more you start to, if you push yourself too hard on the downhills thinking, oh well, I can do this bit, you're still tiring the muscles in your legs, and then you feel that on the uphill, and then you don't have the same strength for the uphill.
Yeah, I agree, because I think it's like we were saying, you slow down on the uphills usually because you're hiking up the hills. But you don't slow down too much. You try and keep a good pace. You run a very kind of comfortable pace on the flats, and then with the downhill, you probably do want to accelerate just a little. But it's all about efficiency, isn't it? It's just trying to keep efficient and keep level, and this is one of the things that's really made me sort of wholeheartedly make this kind of running part of my life, because I've suffered over the years with anxiety, which leads into anger issues, and the whole fact that you need to stay calm and level, and not be excited on the start line or the finish, and just stay really, really calm, as calm and level as you can the whole time, physically and mentally. I really like it, and it's really good for me. And it's made a huge difference to me.
See, my little thing in my head is always just steady away. That's just what I think. I just think steady away. There's no rush. It doesn't matter where you are in the first half of the race. That means nothing. It's the second half that counts.
I'm still learning that. I'm getting better with it. The funny thing is that the best I've done was I guess technically my third ultra, the Oldham Way Ultra, which was in April. When it was my first one back after the Spine Challenger, where I'd completely trashed myself going up the distance too fast. So the last thing I wanted to do was trash myself, but I needed to go out and do something of the kind of thing I want to do to see how I'm going, and went, right, I've got to pace this, I've got to keep it steady. And I said to myself, once I get into the final 10 miles, if I'm feeling good, you're allowed to go. And ended up 5 of us finished joint second place. And it was one of the most enjoyable days out I've ever had.
And also you did really well.
And that's right. And that's kind of the point. If you can hold on to that pace and
it's just not letting other people push you, I think, as well. It's just saying, I'm doing this my way. And I'm not going to let the position I finish in or what other people are doing, and actually it's interesting because on Saturday when we did the Goathlands, I set off with this girl Hannah that I've met over a couple of races now, and she's really nice, and we were sort of chatting at the start, and there was another lady who set off and she went, "Oh, that's Bridget, she's a really brilliant ultra runner," and I was like, right, well, let her go then. If this is her thing and she's really brilliant at it, then don't worry about her. But then in the end, I don't know if she was having a bad day, I don't know what, but in the end, at about mile 20-ish, maybe 21, I went past her, and she must have been miles ahead of me at the start, ahead, but it was of no concern to me where she finished. It was just I had to run at the pace that I was comfortable at, and I think that has to be the mentality for me, because the minute I'll start trying to think, oh, well, I need to catch so and so, or I need to do, I'll stop running my race, start running their race, and then I'll be I won't enjoy it, and I'll be in bits.
The mistake I've made in the last couple of races is that I get, they're both 60-mile races, I'll get 20 or so miles in, maybe even 30 miles in, and be feeling really good. And I find it hard then to hold myself. I've been holding myself back all the way up to that point, and I'm thinking, there's only this far to go, and it's too early to let yourself go, and that's the mistake I've made, and then really struggled and dropped the pace right off at the end of the 2 races.
But you still finished well, haven't you? It's not bad. It's just
the White Rose Ultra that I just did. There was 60 people signed up to start the 60. I'm not sure how many actually were on the start line, but there was 60 I know beforehand were signed up, and I finished 7th.
Wow.
But there was a massive gap between 6th and 8th. It was almost a 2-hour gap, and I was in the middle of it, and I was getting slower and slower and expecting people to come past me. Nobody ever did, because I was just moving around in this gap.
It's funny that, isn't it?
It was really strange.
It's funny how you get this.
You seem to get the kind of few strung out at the front that can be quite a wide time period, but that's kind of like the front pack, even if it's very wide, and then you get the chasing pack, and I keep